Disclaimer. I originally wanted to film this in just one session, but it ended up going on for way longer, and so I ended up recording this whole thing in 3 sessions. So if you're wondering why I suddenly changed shirts, or why the lighting suddenly looks different at some points, that's why. Anyway, enjoy this really long look at the Avatar live-action show on Netflix. Bye! Hello everybody! I know I'm a week late, but I'm here to talk about the Netflix's live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I just kind of wanted to talk about this because, well, I really like the cartoon. My relation to the animated show is interesting because, like, I didn't grow up with it. Like, I knew it was a thing, but, like, my family never had, like, the, like, cable stuff. We never had, like, cable TV. We never had Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network or any of that stuff. So I never watched, when I was a kid, I never watched SpongeBob or Teen Titans or Adventure Time or any of that stuff. I know, I remember when I was a kid, like, I constantly asked my parents to, like, get that stuff because I really wanted to watch SpongeBob. But we never did. I did watch my fair share of that on DVDs. I watched the movie like 14 times when we like rented it from the library. But yeah, Avatar kind of passed me by. I had heard of it, like, going through like middle school and high school. I had heard very positive things, and I'm one of those weirdos who, weirdly, the more people like talk about how awesome something is, the more turned off I am. Like, I know, like, the Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Like, I keep hearing people like, oh, it's so awesome, it's so cool, it's like the best thing ever, and that kind of makes me not want to watch it. Same with, like, Spider-Verse and several other things. I don't know, maybe I get it. Although it's usually, like, when I do cave, it turns out, yeah, this actually is awesome. That's what happened here. Like, I saw Avatar was on Netflix, and I was like, there's no way this show can be as good as everyone says it is. But I started watching, and first episode, I was hooked. Like, that rarely happens. Usually, like, the pilot episode is one of the weaker ones, in my opinion, for most TV shows, because, you know, they're still trying to figure everything out. But here, everything felt fully formed. There are a couple, like, a couple things that are a little strange in comparison to the rest of it. Sokka's voice, in particular, is, like, not really soft, maybe softer. I was gonna say higher, but, like, not really. It's really, like, less cartoonish than later episodes, even later in that season. That's, like, the main thing that sort of sticks out to me. The animation isn't quite as good as it would get later. But yeah, I binged the entire show over the course of about a week. And I loved most of it. It has its faults, it's not perfect. No show is perfect. But I'd say it's like, it's up there with like Star Wars: The Clone Wars and The Simpsons. The first 8 seasons of The Simpsons. As like one of my favorite shows ever. I watched the Shyamalan film, because that was also on Netflix, and it is terrible. I don't hate it like a lot of the fan base does, but I also don't really get upset at like bad versions of something I like. You know, when like I watched Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom in theaters, and after I got out, I was like, well, that was bad. Like, that's like one of the only times that like I saw this with like my best friend of my family, and all of us came out of that thinking, well, that sucked. It's like one of the only times that happened, but it was like, oh well. I mean, it was kind of fun to like watch and kind of make fun of. You know, a lot of that was really stupid. And the Shyamalan film is absolutely terrible. It's terrible cinematography, terrible acting, terrible direction. Weird. The changes to the source material don't really make sense. I think it is closer to the source material than some people give it credit for, but you know, all the life is just sucked out of it. and all the color sucked out of it. It's like, that's honestly my biggest complaint with a Shyamalan film. There's like no color. And the show was just so colorful. Yeah, there's a lot of browns, but like even the browns feel like colorful. Like there's just no color here. Then the show got like a sequel, Legend of Korra. I've actually not watched that show yet. I know it is very polarizing among the fandom. I know the endgame couple, because you can't go on something like, you can't search Legend of Korra on anything without coming up across, you know, what I think is like the last scene of the series. So, yeah, it's a thing. I do want to watch it at some point. I will, but like, not at the moment. I've not read any of the books. I've read some of the comics. Not all of them though. I think actually I own like 2. Hold on, let me get one. Yeah, here it is. The newest one in the series is Azula and the Spirit Temple, a short one. It's like a single issue thing, but I just bought it because she's my favorite character. But yeah, I remember hearing like things about Netflix making a live-action Avatar show, because like the cartoon did super well on Netflix. Like it was like constantly at the top in like the most popular things watched for like months. I have no doubt that that Netflix is how so many people, again myself included, were introduced to Avatar. So yeah, I can't really blame Netflix for doing something like this. I remember hearing like talks of like doing like a modern like interpretation of the show, which just sounds like all sorts of no. Admittedly, part of me wants to see what would come of it out of morbid curiosity, because like I feel like these characters like obviously the world building is like really important for the show, but like the characters are so good, I feel like you can honestly plop them into just about any situation and they'd still be compelling. Like if they had like, this obviously won't happen because of the companies who own the properties, but like if Avatar crossed over with like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, then I don't think they'd feel out of place. I think they'd actually fit in really well. I don't remember when hearing that they'd be making like a full live-action show. I know they announced it like years ago. It was like in development hell for like some time. I do remember hearing that the original creators, you know, Brian and Mike, were originally on, but they left due to creative differences. And after watching the show, I'm not sure what those were, because there's definitely things changed, but I'm not really sure if it was like one thing or a bunch of little things. Was it too similar? Was it too different? I don't know. That might be why like the official Avatar YouTube channel has not done any advertising for this adaptation. And then like a long while passed, and then a few months ago, I got like a recommendation on YouTube for like Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I was like, is this like a fan-made video or something? But like no, it was like the official Netflix account. I'm like, alright, I'll watch it, and I don't know. Like by this point, I had forgotten this was even happening. So I clicked on the video, and I was like, I was actually kind of surprised. Like it actually looked really cool, and like visually anyway. Like again, I said my biggest complaint with a Shyamalan film was that it just looked so boring, and there was like no color. Well, here there was like all the color, and like everything looked so big and impressive. Like, and the characters actually looked like the characters. Shocking, I know. Like Zuko actually looks like Zuko. Like Katara and Sokka, you know, aren't white. I can't believe it either. I definitely had questions, but you know, I was like, okay, you have my attention. There were more trailers, there were posters, and there were some things that made my eyebrows raise. Like I was thinking, wait, Wait, Azula's here? Wait, Mei and Ty Lee are going to be in this thing? Wait, wait, the Fire Lord actually shows himself? And, well, why? Because, well, we'll get to it when I actually talk about, like, the characters more. But, like, I had my doubts. Again, I had my doubts. I was cautiously optimistic, but, you know, this is Netflix we're talking about. Netflix, we're gonna ruin The Witcher by, like, you know, stripping, like, Henry Cavill of, like, any creativity, and then eventually just kicking him out of the show, period. Yeah. I've not watched that, but I'm really sorry for all Witcher fans out there. At least the Castlevania shows are good. Anyway, but yeah, they dropped all of this. They dropped all 8 episodes at once, which is weird. Why did they do this? Like, why didn't they just do like 1 episode at a time? They dropped them on, like, February 22nd, which was the day after the 3-episode premiere of Season 3 of The Bad Batch, so I had a lot of TV watching to do. And I didn't watch all the episodes like in a row because like it's like 7 hours. And I have other things to do. Well, actually first I watched all of book 1 of the cartoon again. Just so I could be up to speed on everything and so I could like point out, alright, that's different. That's different. That's the same. I didn't watch book 2 or 3 because even though I knew characters from those books were here, I had a feeling they would not add stuff from those, and I was right. Here we are. The 8 episodes are out. I honestly have no idea what the fandom thinks of them. I'm willing to bet they don't like it all that much, given how vehemently fandoms react to any kind of change. And some just dismiss it outright because of the original creators of the cartoon stepping down, or because it's live action and, you know, there's an argument that making it like a live action adaptation of something, of an animated property, sort of is disrespectful to like animation, because animation, let's be real, is still not as respected as it should be. Like, fucking Across the Spider-Verse, you know, hailed by just about everyone as one of the best movies from last year, was only nominated for Best Animated Feature. It did not get a nomination for Best Sound. It did not for Best Score, Original Score. Well, Dial of Destiny was for some reason. It was not nominated for Best Picture. I was like, come on. But then again, like Godzilla -1 was only nominated for like Best Foreign Feature or some. Actually, was it? Hold on, I'm gonna look. Hold on, I'm gonna look that up. Yeah, it was only nominated for Best Visual Effects. Yeah, it wasn't even nominated for Best International Feature Film. Like, what? Come on, guys. Though, at least, like, the people who worked on it, like, I saw that video of, like, them celebrating their nomination for Best Visual Effects. That was really heartwarming. Anyway, okay, I'm getting really off topic. Back to Avatar. But, like, I will always judge something for what it is and not what it isn't. For example, like, I hate Metal Gear Survive. Like, I know a lot of people despise it on principle because, like, how dare Konami do this after, like, they kicked out Kojima? And yes, I was part of that problem because, like, Konami was just the worst. But, like, most of my hatred for Metal Gear Survive comes from being the most boring damn thing in existence. Like, it is so dull. It is so boring that, like, even if this were not attached to Metal Gear, I would still, like, hate it as much. I will judge it based on, like, what it is. Obviously, I cannot fully talk about this show without comparing it to the cartoon, because at times they really want you to, and at other times they really don't. It's weird how this... You're gonna see, like, how all over the place my thoughts are as I talk about this stuff. I guess I'll start with the visuals, because, like, the visuals are something that I honestly don't really have any complaints with. Like, again, the Shyamalan film was so dull to look at. Here, like, it's, like, surprisingly, despite the more realistic slant they're going with this show, it still looks really colorful. Obviously, like, Aang's outfit is still, like, that bright, like, orange, red, yellow. his blue tattoo is still there. I will say I really like how the Airbender tattoos look. Like obviously a flat color arrow on your head and your hands is gonna look strange, no matter what. You can get away with that in a cartoon, but like you can't just have like just a flat color tattoo like that on a human being, a real human being, and not have it look silly. So they have like, you look closely, there's like this little pattern that they have, and it looks very nice. The Shyamalan film actually did this too, but the whole arrow was a pattern, and I thought it looked fine there, but I like this better. Most of the characters like have like the exact same like outfit as in the cartoon. Sokka's like hair, like his sort of like mohawk wolf tail thing is less noticeable because like they didn't like shave like the sides of his head. So at first I couldn't even tell like he had like a wolf tail, but like you'll spot it like when you like look at his head from like the back. I think Appa's fur looks like really good, like especially when it's like raining and you can like see like how drenched his fur is. Momo also looks really good. Like, the original design of the cartoon was obviously meant to look more silly than cute, and the design of the Shyamalan film just looked atrocious, like everything. But it looks really cute here. The effects on the bending, I really like how, like, firebending, you can see like the heat aura coming off the fire. Like sometimes the auras from like the firebending and the airbending are a little visually distracting, but I really like the effect they have most of the time, because like in the real world they would have like that effect. Like in a cartoon, like animating all that would be really difficult and might end up being more visually distracting than it would be like in real life. So like again, like, you know, like 2D is really good at simplicity. Like you try to add a lot more detail in, and the drawing starts to look overcomplicated sometimes. Live action stuff, and even like CG films, like the beauty is in the details. And I think like the show does this like really well. The locations look really cool, like the Northern Wild Tribe. I think Omashu looks really cool, and the Fire Nation capital. I forgot what the name of the place was. Like these all look really cool. I think a lot of these, most of these are sets too. Like there's definitely areas where I can definitely tell, like, oh yeah, that they used CG it. They used a green screen. Like sometimes the green screen when the characters are writing Appa, I can definitely tell. But like most of the time, it feels like they're like in an actual location. Again, like the effects I think are actually mostly like really solid. I think like they're definitely a lot better than most of what the live action Disney Plus shows, or a lot of the Disney films, live action stuff, do, because, you know, obviously, because like Disney is obviously stretching their VFX teams thin, and I don't know if like Netflix has like their own VFX stuff, but I didn't notice like too much noticeable distractions. There are a couple times when like characters are like doing like ridiculous moves like far away. I'm like, all right, that's CG. But most of the time, it looks nice. I think the action filming is mostly fine. Again, like the Shyamalan. I swear I don't hate Shyamalan, but like sometimes he's like, notice my directing. So he like has all this like panning shots, which is supposed to look impressive, but really you just have like a bunch of people like in the background standing around doing nothing until like the camera is ready to focus on them, and it looks awkward and dumb. Especially that scene where like Aang and Zuko, you know, Zuko's blue spirit, and they're like fighting off Zhao's forces. Here, the action is obviously like much more focused. It's generally exciting enough. I wouldn't say it's not exceptional, but you know, it gets the job done. I wasn't confused by anything that was happening. I could always tell like what was going on, who was where, doing what. There were a couple times when like the focus wasn't on what I think it should have been. But you know, it is what it is. this is okay. This next thing, I don't know what people are gonna say, but I think this is something that I think the live action show actually does better than the cartoon, and that's the music. The cartoon score was fine. You know, I like the fact that they actually try to make it sound like East Asian. But also so remarkable, and like, I swear, the first season, like they played the same like tension theme, you know, theme like every single time the characters got into like a sticky situation, just like 10 times in like the first half of the season, and it got really tiring. Like, I don't know what it is, but like video games just do this stuff a lot better than movies and TV have ever done. I'm definitely using like video game music over this video right now. This show still does like the trying to sound East Asian a little less than the cartoon maybe, and some people might have a problem with that. But there's obviously like less repetition of the same music, so that's obviously a plus. And I like the whenever the music decides to go grand, first of all, it is generally used at appropriate times, like the first scene when the Fire Nation is attacking the air nomads. Like, they have like this like big like Star Wars bombastic sounding thing with like a chorus. That sounds really good. I'm gonna have to like maybe like listen to like the soundtrack. I don't know if it's like on YouTube or Spotify or something. But I do at least think I wasn't annoyed by repetition like it was the original. Yeah, that's a presentation of the way. I guess should I talk about like the characters first, or should I talk about go to each episode itself? Alright, I guess I'll talk about the characters, since I'm looking at the Wikipedia's cast thing right now. This will jog my memory. Avatar is a very character-driven show in my eyes. Obviously, there's a plot. Like, the plot is generally moving forward. There's some, like, filler stuff, like, in the cartoon. But, like, it is generally... Book 1 especially is, like, very linear. But the characters are why everyone likes it. Like, the plot is, you know, pretty basic. You know, it's like, oh, no, it's like... Aang has to, like, master all the elements before the comet comes and the Fire Lord kills everyone. But, you know, it's the characters, which is why everyone loves this show. And in my opinion, a successful Avatar adaptation is going to handle primarily on how they handle Aang and Zuko. And I'll start with Aang first because he's the main character. First of all, I want to say that Aang and Zuko, I think, look about as close as you can to the cartoon in live action. Zuko especially. Like, I saw some special features with like the cast, like on YouTube, where, you know, like Zuko's actor, you know, had his full set of hair, and I'm like, okay, he looks almost exactly like him. Like, so, like, if this show does get to like book 3, then we know that he's gonna look the part. But yeah, Aang is he's probably the one they changed the most. Maybe. Because like in the cartoon, like, he's very like what like, I think Aang is like one of the best like character like introductions ever. Because like when he frees himself from the ice, like gets free from the ice, and he like it's like opens his eyes, sees Katara, and like, there's something I must ask you. And Katara's obviously considers his son, and he just goes, "Will you go penguin sledding with me?" and I'm like, that is amazing. That is amazing. Again, like, yeah, he's the Avatar, but he's still a kid, and like in the Shyamalan film, like, again, there's like no emotion, or like there's like no fun. It's like no fun allowed. And here, like, he does have fun. But and I know this is definitely gonna be one of the more controversial parts. Aang is significantly more focused, like, on his like mission. He's a lot more. He feels a lot more angsty, angsty here than he was in the cartoon. Like, obviously he had his angst. Like, there's a whole episode like dedicated to like Aang dealing with his past, how he ran away from the air nomads, like in their time of need. Actually, like his motivation for running away is actually really different. It was like in the cartoon, Aang, you know, he was such a kid. He was just having fun with the other airbenders. And then, like, Gyatso and the other elders, like, tell him that he's the Avatar. And, like, remember, they told him, like, early, like, he wasn't supposed to know until, like, he was 16, but they had to tell him at 12 because of potential threats from the Fire Nation, which, of course, ended up happening. And Aang, everyone started treating him differently. Like, all the kids didn't want to play with him anymore. Well, you're the Avatar now, it won't be fair. And so he felt like alone and rejected, and like he couldn't take the responsibility. Like, so he like got on Appa and flew away. Especially like the last straw in the cartoon was the other like elders like saying that him overhearing that they were going to take him away from Gyatso and like send him to like I think this north. I forget where is it the northern or the southern air temple? I forget. To the other one. And so that's when he gets on up and flies away. They get into a storm. He's just like completely devastated. And so like in despair, like he goes Avatar state and freezes them in the ice. Here, his being the Avatar was sort of kept a secret. And he just went flying to like sort of clear his head, which yeah, that makes sense. You know, people like go on walks, like cleaning their heads after they hear something, and they just, you know, get caught in a storm. They turn around to head back, and but like they get caught in a wave, and Aang, you know, freezes him and Appa in ice, which was very fortunate because that's when the Fire Nation comes in. Okay, at this point, I think I'm just gonna go over like the episodes themselves and talk about characters when we get to them. I think that's gonna like be structured a lot better. But yeah, that actually happens in the first episode. So the first episode is just called Aang. It's so it starts off with an earthbender, like I guess he's a spy or something. Like he's running away from some firebenders. He's trying to like get a message to the Earth King because it's like the Fire Nation is planning to attack the Earth King. This is 100 years ago, by the way. So this is when Sozin is still the Fire Lord, and he gets captured. And he gets taken to Sozin, and it's like, well, people are gonna know about this. And Sozin's like, attacking the Earth King, it was just a distraction. My real plan is the air temple, and he executes him. The cartoon couldn't really do that much with violence because, you know, it was still a Nickelodeon cartoon. They couldn't like probably show much of the winter. That's how like Jet's death in the cartoon was kept so weirdly ambiguous. Like, you know, did Jet just die? You know, it was really unclear. But like here, this is like TV 14, I think. So Sozin just incinerates him, and like we don't actually see him like die, but like we see the Earthbender's like corpse fall to the ground, and like it kind of looks like Anakin at the end of Revenge of the Sith. You know, when he's on Mustafar and he's getting burned alive, and like that's gruesome. We see more of that stuff here. Like we get to see like the Firebenders attack the it's the Southern Air Temple. I'm reading Wikipedia on this to get to jog my memory. Yeah, the Southern Air Temple. We see the Firebenders attack, and I don't remember if we fully see this in this show. We definitely don't in Book 1. In the Firebenders attack, Gyatso. This time, Gyatso actually fights Sozin. And, you know, can't really do all that much when the comet is overhead and he's fighting the most powerful firebender in the world. And poor Gyatso, he tries, he puts up his best, but Sozin incinerates him. And then they kill all the kids. Not on screen, because, you know, Revenge of the Sith. But yeah, this actually kind of reminded me of Order 66. Again, I said the Star Wars-y music really adds to the comparison. That's like the first 20 minutes. The first 20 minutes of the episode is just the flashback. Yeah, by the way, yeah, all these episodes are much longer because I guess every live-action show now has to be a minimum 40 minutes. This first episode is like over an hour. And I'm like, okay, complaint number one. I don't like this. I don't like that, like, every live-action show needs to have their episodes be really long because we get less episodes that are just longer. And usually the pacing takes a massive dump whenever that happens. Now, I think the pacing of this show is actually mostly fine. Like, I didn't notice anything. Like, in other shows, like Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power is probably the worst example I can think of right now. Even like the Obi-Wan show, you know, a lot of the live-action Star Wars shows, the pacing is just so sluggish and boring. Here it isn't, although I'm wondering if that's just because I'm constantly looking for stuff they do different from the cartoon. But yeah, we cut to like 100 years after. We go to the Southern Water Tribe. We see like Katara trying to waterbend, and obviously, you know, she's not really all that good at it. Though, like here, like she can like barely like make waves. Whereas in the cartoon, she, well, can't accidentally, but she's still, like, you know, in anger, like, thrashes the water around, which is, you know, how she accidentally breaks Aang's ice sphere. But, like, here, Katara and Sokka are fishing, you know, it's basically the cartoon. They're going through the glacier, and they hit the iceberg, and the iceberg shows the giant light, and Zuko, on a ship, sees the light. You know, it's basically again, it's like the cartoon. So, he sets out to find him. So, Aang comes out of the iceberg. He does not wake up, like, immediately. He's unconscious, and they go bring him to the village. That's weird. I don't know, I don't think I like that change. Everyone is, they're like, what is that? And Gran sees like the tattoos, like, he's an airbender. And yeah, she's like, unfortunately, there's another change I don't really like, that Gran is now this like, yeah, the typical like exposition like granny. Like she does the whole, I think she like recites the whole like narration from the cartoon, you know. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. You know, as if they all don't know that. Granted, she's like telling this to Aang, who is woken up by now. It's because he obviously doesn't know. And she makes the insinuation that he's been in the iceberg for 100 years. And like, Aang is significantly more confused by the Fire Nation's war. Like, it takes a while for him to like get it in his head. Yeah, they go to the Fire Nation ship, and Aang gives Katara some encouragement, and now she can create a ball of water. Alright. Then Zuko's ship arrives. He goes up to them, and it's like, hey, hand over the airbender, you know, the cartoon. And that's when they're like, oh shit, I think Aang is the Avatar. Sokka, so Sokka is initially initially like less hesitant to like hand Aang over. Like he's about to like do it until like Katara tells him to stop. And I don't know if I like that. They fight, and I notice here like in the cartoon, like all the men have gone off to war, but here there's still like some like young men and some teenage boys around Sokka's age that are still here. So now they can actually like put up a bit of a better fight against the Fire Nation. Then Aang arrives and he says that like I'll go with you if you leave these people alone. And you know, he's taking the ship. meets Iroh, and I will say out of all the characters, like out of all like the main characters, I think Iroh is probably the one who looks the most different. Like his pointy like goatee and sideburns. I don't know how you like make that look good in live action. But like he has sort of like a more full beard kinda. But like you still have like the shaved part like up here. So I don't know, it looks kind of strange to me. It never stopped bothering me throughout all 8 episodes. Iroh's still mostly Iroh. He's a bit more serious than he is in the cartoon. But you know, he's still friendly. He's still like offering wisdoms and gets distracted by games and tea. Iroh sort of like tells Aang like stuff about like why the Fire Nation's doing their stuff, and while making it clear that he clearly does not fully agree with them. Katara and Sokka, like, they fly opposite Zuko's ship, and this is why I say I don't like that they bring Aang unconscious to the village on their boat. Because in the cartoon, Aang gives them a ride on Appa. And that's how they figure out that him going yip yip is the way to get Appa flying. So, when they go on Appa to rescue Aang in the cartoon, they're initially not... Appa initially just, doesn't listen to them. They just met him. And, like, Sokka's like going, what does he say? Like, what does that kid say? Hey, like, yip, yip. And that gets him flying. And, like, that change, like, sort of now makes them being able to fly Appa not make much sense, in my opinion. Aang escapes Zuko. Here, he steals Zuko's notebook, which has some things on, like, because, Zuko's trying to look, hunt for the Avatar, he's, like, probably got done research, like, on all the Avatars. This is definitely not on the cartoon. Don't remember what this actually does in later episodes, but, that happens. Sokka and Katara get him on Appa and they fly away. Zuko tries to, like, blast them down, but, like, Katara somehow managed to extinguish it with waterbending, which, by the way, they're like 100 feet up in the air. I don't know how she did that, especially since she's still just learning. They go to the Southern Air Temple, because, if they go back to the Southern Water Tribe, Zuko's gonna follow them and probably destroy the place. Aang finds Gyatso's skeleton and starts glowing, makes this big tornado, kind of like the cartoon. This is another change that I think is very strange. So, in the cartoon, it's Katara, braving the winds. She, like, tells Aang, like, Aang, you're better than this. Like, come on. Like, she's the one who, like, gets him to come back. Here, it's Aang remembering Gyatso's words. Remembering something Gyatso told him, and that's how he exits his glowy avatar state. And I don't really like that. I prefer it when it's Katara telling him that stuff, because it strengthens their connection. And there's something that I've noticed is that even though, like, I'm pretty sure they want to keep the trajectory of, like, Aang and Katara being, like, the end game pairing, they don't have quite as much time together as I thought they would. They definitely do. Like, more so than either of them with Sokka. But I feel like... But there are parts in, like, the original cartoon, like, the first book, first season, where they spend some, like, bonding time together that just aren't here. That's what it is. And that's, after this, Aang is like, alright, I'm the Avatar, I will save the world. And that's where the first episode ends. So something I've noticed about episode 1. The way these episodes are structured, they often, like, cram multiple episodes into one, and then sometimes they'll just stretch some out. I don't know, it feels kind of strange. Like episode 1 combines the first 3 episodes plus the flashback to the Southern Air Temple all into like one thing. But episode 2, Warriors, is basically just a very stretched out version of the Warriors of Kyoshi, with some of the Spirit World episode, the Spirit World 2-parter. Oh, I was talking about how I didn't know if like Aang looking at Zuko's notebook would do anything, but here, like, I remember, like, yeah, it says they go to Kyoshi Island, so you can learn more. Okay, here's another thing. The waterbending scroll. That episode is completely cut. Like, there's no pirates. Zuko doesn't like tangle them. Actually, Katara never loses her necklace. Which, I mean, yeah, it doesn't really mean that much. You know, it's so kind of weird. Like here, Grand just gave her the waterbending scroll, which... Why did they have that? Like, why didn't Katara have that earlier? But anyway, they go to Kyoshi Island. They see the statue, and like in the original, like Kyoshi warriors arrive. They capture them, but then when Aang goes like, "I'm the Avatar," and like the statue like shines down on him, they're like, "Oh shit, he's the Avatar," and they let them go. This is also when Iroh and Zuko, you know, still mad about losing the Avatar, but their ship wasn't like completely destroyed in an avalanche like it was in the cartoon, so they just sort of go to a village. That's when they meet Zhao. And Zhao, his role's actually changed a bit. Like, he's not as much of a smug dickhead here. He's more of just a slime ball. But, like, and he seems like, at first, genuinely willing to help. That does not sound like the cartoon one at all. But, you know, they still end up sort of being rivals, like Zhao. Like here, like in the cartoon, it's just Zuko goes to Kyoshi Island. But here it's Zhao who goes to attack them. And Zuko, like, sort of, like, skirts around to find them. Katara starts practicing waterbending with the scroll, so... Yeah, they sort of like condense a lot of Katara's waterbending into just certain specific scenes. Like, there isn't really any scenes where she gets really frustrated. And, yeah, something weird. Aang doesn't really do waterbending here. Like, he kind of does it, like, occasionally, but, like, it's really just Katara, so we don't get that episode where, like, Katara gets jealous of how much of a natural Aang is. And, remember, in the cartoon, that's why she steals the waterbending scroll in the first place. But, you know, and... They're supportive of each other. You know, I hate the shit in the cartoons where, in like, things in general where characters are just needlessly pissed and jealous of each other for being good at something. Like, I know, like, they're kids. Like, jealousy comes naturally to everyone, including... I definitely was jealous of, like, people doing better at things like sports than I was. But, you know... Yes, it does sort of mean like our main trio doesn't really have that much conflict with each other when, you know, they're still trying to get to know each other. Aang goes to the Kyoshi statue, enters Avatar state, and he just goes to the Spirit World. This is another weird change. Like in the cartoon, like the Spirit World is introduced like halfway through the season, and Aang sort of goes there by accident. Like he's like trying to go there because the spirit animal like kidnapped Sokka, but he just doesn't know how to get there. And then he just I don't remember what he did. I can blame my spotty memory for this one. He ends up in the spirit realm. He talks to Roku there. Here he talks to Kyoshi, and like Kyoshi is definitely not in book 1. I think she's in book 2. I think that's where she's introduced. And I find this interesting because, like, this is the first of several examples of ways you can definitely tell how much this show is aware of the impact of certain characters. Let's be honest, out of all the previous avatars, including Roku, like, aside from Aang and Korra, Kyoshi has easily the breakout one of the bunch. She's had 2 whole books about her. that I have not read. She constantly wins polls on, like, who's your favorite avatar, who's not Aang or Korra. Like, she is really popular, and she's basically, how I remember her, you know, a strict hard ass. She's telling him that, like, the avatar, it is supposed to be a strong warrior, because, you know, Kyoshi's kind of a violent asshole. Remember, she split, like, a chunk of land away from the rest of the landmass one time. So, Aang is, I've said this before, but, like, Aang is harder on himself, like, in this show than he is in the cartoon. And I'm wondering if in-universe, the reason why is just because he talked to Kyoshi instead of Roku first. And Kyoshi is, you know, not soft. She is very hard on everything. So I'm like, so it's technically her fault in-universe that Aang is angsting a lot more than I would expect. Meanwhile, Suki and Sokka, you know, do their thing. She's like teaming up for a fight, and this I know is probably the most controversial thing about the show from what I've seen. I knew it was going to be the second I heard it. Is that Sokka's sexism has been almost completely scrubbed out. Now, on the one hand, yeah, the scenes in that Kyoshi Warriors episode in the cartoon of him, you know, talking down to them, like, oh, girls can't fight and stuff. That's cringe. Yeah, of course, I cringe every time I watch that. But it's also like intentional cringe. That's sort of, he learns. It's like, remember he says, like, I was treating you like a girl, but I should have been treating you as a warrior. It's just like, well, I am a warrior, but I'm also a girl. You know, learn that the two are not mutually exclusive. I understand, like, you know, in our modern climate, people are generally, like, showrunners are, like, terrified of just playing, like, anything politically incorrect from a character you're supposed to like. So, like, yeah, like, again, in the first episode, instead of Sokka going, this is what you get when you bring a girl along. Here, he's more concerned that, you know, Katara, being a waterbender, is going to make the fighters going to find out, which is a legitimate concern, and it does make him nicer and more sympathetic, I guess. But it also means he's kind of left without a character arc. At least at first. Like, he does have one, like, where, like, he's remembers, like, talking to his dad, which is in the cartoon, but isn't really that big a thing. But, like, he's, like, trying to, like, be like, I am going to be a warrior. I think that works. Okay, we're gonna see that more in, like, later episodes. But it does mean that Sokka doesn't really undergo a change here, and so I don't know. It's a thing called deliberate values dissonance, where like how in the movie 42, like, most of the characters just, like, liberally use the N-word because, well, that's what people did at the time. Like, even, like, you know, Jackie Robinson's coach just called him that, like, multiple times, because, yeah, that's what people said. These people said that, like, back in the day. Yeah, it's like, it's obviously cringe to, like, modern audiences, but, like, it's intentional to make it more authentic. And, you know, that kind of the women stay in the kitchen attitude would have been, like, common, like, around then. I'm wondering if part of the reason they did this was just to make sure the Fire Nation wasn't, you know, the bad guys weren't more inclusive than the good guys. We'll get to, like, the Northern Water Tribe soon. You know, like, there's still sexism, like, in the show, but, like, yeah, the characters display it. but Sokka doesn't. Anyway, okay. Soapbox rant over. Back to, you know, the actual show. Suki and Sokka get a lot more screen time together. Definitely because, like, the episode is twice as long as the original cartoon. They learn to fight. They don't really like each other. I kind of like how they're both kind of awkward around each other. So Suki apparently has never actually left the island. It's like one of if not the first time she's seen like a teenage boy before, and she just kind of gets flustered. Like she sees him without his shirt on, and I know that's going to be popular with some people. I think they're pretty cute together. Suki is another one who I think looks like almost dead on, like how she looked in the cartoon. Her hair isn't like as noticeably red as it is, but like the makeup, like the Kyoshi makeup looks really good. Again, like the costuming in general is like really, really good. Like here, like a lot of times in live action adaptations of anime source material, it's just like the characters are wearing cosplay. It doesn't here for the most part. And Suki is one of the best examples of this, alongside Zuko and Aang, as I said. They come close, and you know, they do the almost kiss thing, and that's when the Fire Nation comes in. And again, like Zhao and his troops fight the Kyoshi, while Zuko sneaks around to like fight off Aang. Katara tries to fight him, but she loses. And then Aang. So they have this part. The part in the cartoon where at Roku's temple, Aang transforms into Roku and blasts the bad guys away. They do that here, but he transforms into Kyoshi. Again, presumably because like I feel like more people these days, not super familiar with the cartoon, know Kyoshi a lot better than Roku. Roku's still in the show, we'll get to it. But like again, they're putting a lot more importance on Kyoshi than the cartoon did. She also like gets like a vision. This is another change that I'm split on. She gets like a vision of the Northern Water Tribe, and that is what drives them to go there instead of, hey, let's go to the Northern Water Tribe so that we can find Katara and Aang a waterbender master. Yeah, they still do that, but here they're driven because like Aang has a vision that the Water Tribe will be destroyed by the Fire Nation. That is extremely strange. And also, like, Kyoshi doesn't tell him about the comet. Actually, no one does, which is weird. The comet is still in the show, but the way they put it in feels very last minute, and we'll talk about that when we get into season 4. And like afterwards, we get to the final part. Like after they leave Kyoshi Island, that's when someone gives like a message in the Fire Nation. Like one of the like warrior leaders like gives like a message to the Fire Lord, and this is interesting. You know what I was talking about with Kyoshi? How like everyone knows like Kyoshi, that's why she has more points here. We actually see the Fire Lord in this show. Like again, very end of episode 2. That's when we see him for the first time. Where in the cartoon, we didn't really see him at all until season 3. Like, he was sort of in shadow. He barely spoke. Like, he had, like, a total of, like, I think, like, 4 lines in season 1. But here, I think he's actually in, like, makes appearances in, like, every episode of season 1 from now on. Like, Gestahl doesn't really do much. He's just always in the palace. But he shows up a lot, and I'll say, he looks very... He looks about what I expect. He's actually played by Daniel Dae Kim, who was actually the voice of General Fogg in Book 2 of the cartoon. There's also a character in Korra who I do not recognize that name. Hiroshi Sato. And yeah, he definitely looks the part. I remember seeing like a bunch of memes like online, looking at him and going, "Oh no, he's hot!" And I get it because he's fire. His performance is definitely different from like Mark Hamill's extremely raspy voice that I cannot do because my voice is already starting to give out. But you know, this quieter version definitely, it works for the character. How like cruel and detached he is from everything. Detached, that's the word. I'll talk more about him when we get to the later episodes. But just so you know, that he is here. His personality is a little different, and he'll be showing up quite a bit more. And that's how the episode ends. And so I'm going to end this video for now. I was meaning to talk about the entire show and just this one thing, but my voice is ready to die, and I've already been talking for over an hour straight. And I have a lot to say. So anyway, that's it for me. I'll talk about episode 3 when my voice gets better. See you then, I guess. Hi, welcome back. I'm back to talk more about the Netflix's live-action Avatar show. I'm sorry, I meant to do this all in like one video, but it turns out I just had so much to say that like I spent like over an hour just talking about like the setup and the first 2 episodes, and then my voice started to die out, and so I just decided to stop. So I'm back. I'll hopefully get through at least another few episodes before my voice starts giving out again. Don't worry. Brought a water bottle this time. Anyway, let's just jump right into episode 3. Old Mass Shoot. So, this starts out with another scene that's original to the show. So we see, like, in the Fire Nation, there's a group of people who started an assassination plot against the Fire Lord. For whatever reason, I thought the first guy, the leader guy, was Jet because he kind of looked like him, but he's not. Jet shows up later in the show, later in this episode. No, it's just this guy. And they got the help of a servant girl who's working in the palace. And so they somehow made it to the throne room until they're attacked by some guards. And the Fire Lord himself comes in, and he's like, "Haha, you fell right into our trap. Isn't that right, my daughter?" And the servant girl, like, wears her headband, her, like, little hair things around, and it's Azula. So, this is actually a pretty good, like, introduction for the character. Obviously, everyone knows she's not really supposed to show up this early. Like, she makes a couple of non-speaking cameos in the cartoon. She isn't even named. So, I really like she's introduced, like, essentially, like, you know, being the snivelly, manipulative little shit that she is. And, you know, going, like, undercover to, like, thwart an assassination attempt against her father. Later we see, after, like, Ozai, like, burns them alive, again, kind of like how Soza did the Earthbender in the first episode, he shows the note that he got at the end of the second episode to Azula, which is, the note is from Zhao saying that Zuko has found the Avatar, and he's like, well, it looks like Zuko has actually accomplished something for once. And, this is definitely a change from the cartoon. In the cartoon, like, Ozai just hated Zuko. Like, he just hated him. Like, obviously, now this is obviously done out of spite. Like, if you, like, because, like, the backstory is that, Ursa, you know, Zuko and Azula's mom, was basically trying to, like, she hated Ozai because he's a terrible, terrible person. And she was like, I wish Zuko wasn't your son. And Ozai's like, you want that wish so badly? I'll stop treating him like he's my son then. And yeah, that's why he treats him like shit, because he's just out of spite. And it's also why he's, like, super favoritist to Azula, which, and also why Ursa couldn't show, like, any motherly affection towards her. Because it's like, if you show her any the same affection, she'll get it just as bad. So yeah, essentially everything terrible that happens to the two of them is entirely Ozar's fault. Here, he doesn't seem to have. He's not playing favorites. In fact, like when he hears signs of Zuko actually accomplishing something, he starts looking at Azula a little more unfavorably. Like, well, you're just gonna have to do better then. And this is probably going to be a change that'll annoy some people, but I kind of like that. I kind of like how he pits his own kids against each other, basically to, you know, I guess strengthen them both and make them much hardier and meaner and crueler. Make sure they're just perfect for taking the throne. And we'll see more of this in later episodes. Anyway, that's when we go to Omashu. And again, this is another episode that's like fusing like three together. So we go to Omashu, but Aang notices what he thinks is an airbender around there. Of course, people who watch the cartoon probably know who it is immediately. But here, they walk up to Omashu. They get help from like a turnip farmer who like, you know, sort of smuggles them inside in his like truck. I think Aang is like just hidden underneath a blanket or something. We only see like Katara and Sokka in. No, wait, I'm forgetting. No, Aang just follows what he thinks is the airbender with his glider. No, Katara and Sokka are the only ones in the cart. Okay, my bad. Of course, like Aang finds out. Oh, it's not an airbender. It's just, you know, a kid in a wheelchair who's using a mechanical glider. So yeah, they're sort of fusing the Omashu episode with the Northern Air Temple episode, you know, with the mechanist and stuff. And so the boy, you know, Teo, they'll go visit, you know, his father, the mechanist. I think it was just called the mechanist on the cartoon. His name is Sai here. So that's interesting. And we see Cabbage Merchant. Yes, the Cabbage Merchant shows up. And he's played by the same guy who voiced him in the cartoon. It's, hold on, let me find it. Yeah, it's James C. or Psy, or however you say that. Yeah, at first, like, he doesn't react super bad to his cabbages getting straight. He just goes like, my cabbages! Yeah, you'll see later. I wonder how people are gonna react to, like, the mechanist, because, like, I know a lot of people really didn't like him in the cartoon, because even though, like, they were like refugees going to the Northern Air Temple because no one was there. Aang, you know, got mad at him for, you know, essentially desecrating a sacred place, and I know a lot of fans like probably got pissed at that too. So this sort of fixes that. Sokka like helps him out because, you know, he likes machines, and I noticed Sokka's love of science is kind of downplayed in this show. Like, aside from here and like a couple other times, we don't really see much. Meanwhile, Zhao and Zuko and Iroh notice that the airbender was near Omashu and that they're going there. Again, here, like, Zhao is like offering to help, which he definitely did not do in the cartoon. Like, he's just like kind of an asshole. Here it seems like he really wants to help. I don't know how I feel about that. But then Zhao gets a letter from Azula, and she's like, hey, I'll help you at like some way. Like, we see later that she sends like archers to help him, but like that's what makes Zhao turn against Zuko rather than being against it from the start. Alright. Aang and Teo like go to they're you know gliding, going to the cave. And I really like the cinematography like of them flying around Omashu. It just looks really cool. They go to a cave in the mountains, which is where they find blasting jelly, and they find ropes that are, I didn't catch this, but like Wikipedia is telling me that they are from the turnip farmer, which you'll see who he is like in about a minute. That's when Katara finds out. She's like sort of like sneaking up around, and she's Sai giving the designs to the firebender. She's like, oh no, he works for the Fire Nation. So like unlike in the cartoon where they find out because there's a room dedicated to like Fire Nation stuff. Like you see like the silk with a symbol on it. And that's when like she's about to confront him, but then the turnip farmer stops him, and he's Jet. Yes, this is Jet. And I gotta say, like, his hair is, like, really messy, but, like, otherwise he looks, like, spot on. Like, if Jet existed in real life, this is what he would look like. He even sounds kind of like him, too. Again, Jet was not an homage in the cartoon. But, you know, he lives in the Earth Kingdom. He'll probably... So, I guess this makes sense. And he says that Sai is a Fire Edition spy. And we see, you know, his crew, which is all... They all also look very much like the cartoon. Especially, Pipsqueak, you know, the huge one. I know it's the most basic of expectation subversion, but I always thought that was cute. They have the tree. They go to their tree house. And, Jet is significantly nicer here. Or at least less jerkish. Like, obviously he's still, like, you know, kind of a terrorist. But he's like earnestly listening to Katara when she tells her story. Like, he's not, like, actively, like, pushing her to like, think bad stuff. He's like, focus on, like, what the good aspects of your mother rather than how she died. And that helps Katara form her water whip. Which, I guess the waterbending scroll didn't teach her to do? Okay. Also, like, Zuko and Iroh are exploring Omashu, and, you know, apparently no one notices the guy with the big scar on his head. And Iroh gets a lotus tile, which is going to be important for the next episode, so keep that in mind. So meanwhile, Sokka and Sai are developing the hot air balloon. We don't see it in action here, but we'll see it later. But then, Aang and Katara both return separately. They get into kind of an argument, because Aang thinks Jet is responsible for the bombings that are happening in Omashu, and Katara thinks it's Sai because she saw him as a spy. And Sokka isn't really sure. Because, like, because, like, Jet and Sokka, like, don't, like, interact at all. Sokka doesn't really have any strong opinions on him. So, and I thought that was weird. Like, I think, like, one of the key elements of Jet's episode in the cartoon was Sokka, you know, not trusting him. And, you know, oh yeah, another thing that makes Jet seem nicer, he doesn't beat up an old man. So, your mileage may vary on if this makes Jet more likable, or if it's just softening him for no reason. Katara goes on to Jet, and Jet says, yeah, I'm responsible. Like, and he just tells her that, the next attack, because Sai is going to the King of Omashu, you know, King Boomy, and there's a bomb that he planted in Sai's suitcase. That's kind of, I don't know, it's less obviously psychotic than, you know, drowning a village of earthbenders just to kill some Fire Nation soldiers, but, like, this is probably more illegal? You know, this is attempted regicide? Katara's like, you're a monster, you suck. Bye. And so, they try to stop Jet. Then Zuko comes in and starts fighting Aang. And, like, they're fighting in this area, like, with, like, a lot of, like, tarps, towels, or whatever they're called. Like, they're constantly getting tangled up in them. It must have been annoying for the actors, but, like, it looks nice. It looks colorful, I'll say. They fight. Katara and Sokka go on, like, you know those, like, delivery, like, carts that, like, go throughout, like, the city. They jump on those. There's one time where they have to jump out of a cart and into another one, which is more belief. Which the suspension of disbelief is pushed further when it's a cartoon, because, you know, we're just sort of expecting that. Here, I look at them jumping down. This is like 30 feet. And I'm like, okay, your leg should have broken from that shit. We get to the palace. One of Jet's crew, Wikipedia says this is Longshot. I keep forgetting what their names. I know there's Pipsqueak and Smellery. But yeah, Longshot, like, trying to use the flaming arrow to detonate the bomb, because, you know, timer bombs haven't been invented yet. But Katara uses the water whip to stop it. Aang finds out that Zuko's been tracking him for 3 years because of the notebook, and that's how Zuko finds out Aang stole it. And yet Zuko blasts. So it's blasting again. Like, Cabbage Merchant's thing is, I think, a entirely, like, exploded. And yeah, that's when we hear the big, "My cabbages!" And like, I love that. They definitely made the great move, like, bringing, like, the original actor in to play the character. Like, only he can shout "my cabbages" in just the perfect way. And that's when, the Earthbenders arrive, and, Aang is arrested. And they try to get Zuko, but Iroh, causes a distraction, so Zuko can escape, and Iroh gets captured. And so, Iroh and Aang are both, like, taken prisoner. And that's where the episode ends. Oh yeah, I forgot, yeah, there's, like, another scene where, like, Azula's, like, being an archer for some reason. I don't remember her ever displaying any archery skills in the cartoon. I know she can, like, use a knife and a sword, but, like, I've never seen her, I don't remember her doing any archery. And Mai and Ty Lee are here, and they do nothing, so I'm not really disappointed. I will say, I saw, like, Azula on, like, the posters and, like, in the trailer. I wasn't, like, prepared for, like, how, it sounds a bit weird, how soft she looks. Like, obviously, like, she's a 14-year-old girl. That's what 14-year-old girls look like. But, like, you know, in the cartoon, it's always been kind of weird how she just looks like 4 or 5 years older than she actually is, thanks to, like, her makeup. But I don't know. I guess she looks fine. I was just kind of caught off guard by her looking kind of different. But, you know, performance matters. I think Elizabeth Yu, not heard that name before. She does a fine enough job. You know, she's not as hammy as, like, Grey Delisle is in the cartoon. At least not yet. She's being she's quiet. You know, she still has to, like, prove herself. And Mai and Ty Lee are Mai and Ty Lee. You know, Mai's stoic and likes knives, and Ty Lee is cheerful and positive. I say Ty Lee, the girl who plays Ty Lee, like, is again about as close to what a real life version of Ty Lee would look like. Like, obviously her eyes don't take up 40% of her face, because that would look extremely weird on a human being. But, you know, they look the part. Anyway, next up, we have Into the Dark, which, this is probably the most different one. Like, this is mostly the episode with Boomy, while also having the side plot where Iroh, you know, is kidnapped by Earth Kingdom soldiers and Zuko has to go rescue him. Though obviously, like, you know, in the cartoon, it's just because they just sort of find him there, and, you know, thinking, hey, this might be good. We could capture a big Fire Nation general. And, you know, Zuko has to decide whether he has to chase the Avatar or find his uncle. It also combines, I think, weirdly combines, like, that cave episode from Season 2. I honestly forgot what even happened in that episode, because, like, when I think Season 2, I think of Azula, and, you know, the stuff, and Toph, and the stuff in, like, the Earth Kingdom and things. I don't really think of the cave. But yeah, we start with another flashback where we see, like, young Boomy, and we get, like, you know, sort of like introduction to how, like, weird and kooky he is. And he gives Aang the bison whistle. So instead of Aang buying it, like, at a shop, it's a gift from Boomy. Aang's taken to go see Boomy. Iroh is taken to an Earth Kingdom prison camp. Okay, I'll start with the Boomy stuff. The actor who plays Boomy, like, looks and sounds basically perfect. Like, obviously he looks creepy and gross, but, like, the original character looked creepy and gross, so, like, it fits. Aang deduces that he's Boomy, like, almost right away, which is, that is definitely a change. It's kind of a neutral one in my opinion, because, like, this sort of had to be the case in order for them to do what the rest of the episode wants them to do. But, like, I kind of like how Aang had to deduce that it's Boomy through the trials, especially, you know, the last one. What? It's my name. So, in the cartoon, Boomy is, you know, just kind of like the kooky trickster mentor, who is, you know, not serious at all, you know, until, like, after Aang finds out about it. And, like, in the cartoon, he's, like, really, after Aang introduces you, they're really happy to see each other. Here, Boomy is much more cynical and grumpy because he's resentful that Aang vanished like 100 years ago and that he wasn't there to help when like the Fire Nation is constantly causing problems. And so we do see some traps, like Aang almost gets frozen in the, you know, the candy, which of course, you know, obviously Boomy takes a bite out to show that, you know, it's just candy, guys. So also like Jet shows up for like a minute, like Jet tries to explain himself, but Katara, you know, freezes him to the pole, like how she did in the cartoon. I think this is the first time she actually like uses ice, and I'm like, how does she do that? I honestly don't remember how she even learned to freeze stuff in the cartoon. Maybe the waterbending scroll, I don't know. That's when Sokka and Teo try to get Sai to explain himself. And of course, Sai is like, reveals that, you know, he had to protect Omashin from the Fire Nation so that everyone could be safe, which is, you know, again, slightly, you know, less morally iffy than, you know, desecrating an air nomad temple. So again, he's like, they're definitely like making him like more like fully sympathetic. So after that, Katara and Sokka learn that Aang has been captured, and so they go into like the tunnels, while Zuko, you know, he disguises himself as an Earth Kingdom soldier. Like he, you know, it's a typical like, you know, all soldiers walking by, gets yanked off screen, fight noises, and then Zuko comes out wearing the Fire Nation, wearing the Earth Kingdom soldier uniform. Iroh. You know, how in the cartoon, when Iroh was captured, he left a sandal to find. Here, he drops the lotus tile, and he's on a, you know, a split path. Obviously, Zuko has to choose whether to go after Aang or Iroh. Of course, he goes after Iroh. I don't remember if there was an actual split path in the cartoon. I think it was just like a regular. I think it was just like a path for Aang. Zuko just had to go back if he wanted to get the Avatar, but he just goes on to get Iroh. So Katara and Sokka like encounter some like a bunch of singers who talk about the tunnels and how no one ever comes out of those because of course that's how every like secret tunnel is in fiction. The tunnels are partly created by like people who studied badger moles. I don't remember if this is like the cartoon. Again, I did not watch book 2 to prepare myself for this. This is like the only thing from book 2 that has like anything in the show, aside from, you know, obviously some characters. The tunnels, they go through the tunnels, and eventually, like, the tunnels are like, have all these crystals, right? It looks really pretty. Like, yeah, this is like a thing where, like, details really help in, like, a live-action interpretation of something. But yeah, the badger moles, the tunnels move because badger moles can, I guess, change the course of tunnels or something, and one of them attacks them, but because, you know, Katara and Sokka had sort of an argument, because, you know, the plot. I don't even remember what they were arguing about. I think it was just that, Sokka just didn't want Katara to like be in danger, and Katara was like, "Well, I wanna," but you know, a badger mole attacks. They're like, "I'm sorry," and then the badger mole sees that, oh, they love each other, and so it turns around and leads them to the palace. Meanwhile, like, Boomy, you know, challenges Aang in a fight. And Aang is mostly just avoiding his attacks. At one point, like, Boomy, like, brings down, like, some of the earth from the roof, and, like, he hangs it over his own head and Aang's, and he's like, "You must choose!" Like, you know, obviously, because Aang can't hold up them both for very long. And then I'm like, is Boomy willing to, like, just kill himself to, like, make a point? I don't know. But then Katara and Sokka arrive, and Aang just sort of, like, throws the earth away. Meanwhile, we get more stuff on, like, Iroh's backstory, because, remember he, laid siege to Ba Sing Se for a long time, and the Earthbender guards were, they were young when that happened, and I understand this, like, Earthbender guard has, like, points that, like, you know, Iroh obviously killed a lot of people back then, but, like, the audience is immediately against it because, like, Iroh is Iroh, and anyone being mean to Iroh is just going to earn the fandom's ire no matter what. And after the Earth Kingdom guard was like, "You know nothing of loss. You have no humanity." That's when we get another flashback. There's a lot of flashbacks in this show. Like, there were definitely some, like, in the cartoon. Most of them were just in, like, one episode. But, like, here, we can see, like, Liu Ten's funeral. And, you know, Zuko offers his condolences. We don't really know in the cartoon what Zuko really thought of Liu Ten. But, like, here, it's basically implied that, like, Liu Ten was just kind of, like, a helpful, like, mentor to him. You know, I kind of like that. I kind of wish we could see that instead of just having it being told to us. Again, visual medium, show, don't tell. Like, even like, Ozai, like, is, you know, actually kind of not sympathetic towards Iroh, but, like, he's cordial, at least. He's not, you know, mocking him for being weak or something. But, like, in the cartoon, Ozai just sort of views Liu Ten's death as, like, extra, like, proof that Iroh is not fit for the throne to his father, Azula. I will say, like, one thing I always found weird about the cartoon is that Iroh and Ozai never interact at all. I don't even think they share the same screen, like, even once. I don't even know if they've interacted in, like, supplementary material. But, like, I don't know, I thought it was a missed opportunity considering how important sibling relationships are. With, you know, Katara and Sokka and Zuko and Azula. But I like that they actually get to, like, interact here. They do so again later, when we go over Zuko's backstory. Eventually, Zuko frees Iroh, they defeat the Earth Kingdom soldiers, but one of the Earth Kingdom soldiers, like, throws a knife and stabs Iroh in the back. Zuko just, like, pulls it out, and, like, they don't, like, treat it, so I'm guessing Iroh just has that wound there forever now. I hope they, like, patched it up, because, like, he's gonna bleed out pretty quick, because even though he's powerful, he's still an old man. But yeah, and then they leave, they go back to their ship, and Zuko decides not to capture the Avatar for now. Meanwhile, Boomy is, like, gets inspired by how, like, powerful, like, Aang's friendship with, like, Sokka and Katara is, and Sai helps turn in the Fire Nation spies. And so they're like, yes, we will rejoin the fight of the Fire Nation, which, yeah, good luck with that. So Aang, Katara, and Sokka leave Omashu. Zuko watches them, but he decides not to go after them because Iroh's safety is priority. Again, you know, good guy Zuko. Well, Zuko's never really a bad guy. I still say that, like, Zuko is a good guy pretending to be a bad guy. Yeah, that's the end of episode 4. We're halfway through the show. Let's move on to episode 5. My voice isn't dying out just yet. So this next one is has a lot of differences. I think it's probably the most different one, because this is also a spirit world. This is a spirit world episode. So, while also combining stuff of the one with June. Yeah, June's in this one. We go to, like, they're moving closer to the Fire Nation. Like, Aang sees the burned down forest, you know, like in the Spirit World episode. They go to, like, the village, and they were like, oh, like, spirits are, like, kidnapping our people. Aang, who's still feeling really guilty about, you know, leaving the Airbenders, he goes to the Spirit World. Here, Sokka and Katara are also pulled in, somehow. Like, even they're not sure how it happens. They're sort of like, I guess Aang pulled us in? And they meet, the giant owl, who's from the second book. I forgot his name. Wikipedia says it's Wan Xing Tong, and he's voiced by Randall Duke Kim, who we probably know as Master Oogway from Kung Fu Panda. And the voice sounds really similar, so when I was listening to this, all I could hear was just Master Oogway talking to them. Although he's a lot more harsh, he's a lot harsher than Oogway ever was. You know, Oogway is basically Kung Fu Panda's Iroh. Like, you know, he's pure and perfect and he must be protected at all costs. But, like, only Aang can hear him. And so they have to, like, stay out of trouble. But, you know, trouble finds them. We see, like, the vengeful spirit of the burned down forest who attacks them. And, like, this is really weird. All three are transported to, like, areas of, like, trauma for them. This is so strange. I've noticed this happen a lot in shows lately. Like, the Ahsoka show, like, in the World 2 Worlds is sort of transported back to the Clone Wars, to some big battles. And in, like, Rings of Power, when Sauron reveals himself, he kind of, like, transports Galadriel in her mind to, like, back to Valinor with her brother, and, like, that one sucked, though. I like the Ahsoka one. Like, that's actually the best part of the show. But here, like, Katara's transported to the day when when firebenders raided the Southern Water Tribe, and her mother is again burned alive right in front of her. And yeah, that is like Katara constantly gets flashbacks to that, like, early on in the show, and, like, again, I don't think we see that, like, at all in the cartoon. I don't even think, yeah, like, her mother, like, I don't think she appears until, like, book 3, and again, in flashback. But, like, Katara is, like, traumatized by that, and that's why her waterbending was, like, held back. Alright. And then she sees a familiar, like, masked face, and it just sort of envelops the screen, and we go to Sokka. Sokka talks to a fox spirit, which was, like, a three-tailed fox with a ring on one of its tails. And I was like, wait, why is this here? Turns out that fox ends up being pretty important, as you'll see, like, in later episodes. But then Sokka goes to, like, a memory when he's doing some, like, tests in the Water Tribe. And then he overhears, like, his dad calling him, like, a disappointment or something, which... Alright, I don't recall that ever being in the cartoon. I always thought, like, Sokka had a good relationship with his dad. And, like, you know, Sokka's dad leaving is what made Sokka try to be, like, a warrior. Because, like, yeah, Sokka trying to be a warrior is essentially his character, the closest thing he has to a character arc here, since, like, they cut out the whole Sokka learns not to be sexist thing from earlier in the show. And then, you know, the mask thing eats him. Aang also sees this mask thing, and it's Ko. You know, the face stealer guy. So this is weird. Ko is more of an antagonist here. Like, in the cartoon, he was just sort of like this sort of neutral evil. Like, he wasn't really doing anything. It's just if someone came up to him, he would attack them. They also don't seem to be going on the, if you show an emotion in front of him, he'll just eat your face. That's not here, because, like, Aang definitely shows emotion here, and he doesn't do anything. Ko attacks Aang, and Aang flees the fog, and he goes to, like, again, one of his own memories. Or, so he thinks, it's actually another area of the spirit realm. He finds Gyatso, who apparently chose to stay behind in the spirit realm instead of moving on. And Gyatso gives him some advice, tells him to go find Avatar Roku. And, you know, Gyatso, like, tells him, like, don't blame yourself. If you had not run away from the air nomads, you would have been killed. And, like, you know, that sort of, like, gets Aang to stop blaming himself for the Fire Nation's genocide on the air nomads. Meanwhile, Zuko and Iroh are still trying to track down the Avatar. And that's when Iroh enlists June, who, again, like, June looks like exactly how she looks in the cartoon. She sounds different. Her voice is a bit higher. Something else I find interesting is that, like, you know how in the cartoon, like, Iroh is almost uncharacteristically, like, you know, kind of flirting with her. Here, June's the one who flirts with Iroh, and Iroh's the one who gets kind of flustered. I don't know. It's like, it's not important. It just goes up, like, twice or 3 times. But, you know, it's just something. It's just an interesting change. And so, you know, June goes to track them down. Meanwhile, in the Fire Nation, Azula is trying to convince Ozai to, like, help give Zhao more resources. And Ozai is like, alright, sure. But remember, Zuko is the one who found him, and he's fighting with honor rather than trying to manipulate someone. It's like, and that kind of shuts her up. So she gives Zhao the archers, who, you know, we'll see like in the part where Zhao captures Aang, and it's when Zhao is promoted from commander to admiral. Even though, like, I don't think Zhao has really done anything admiral-y. Like, in the cartoon, like, by this point, he would have been part of multiple, like, big battles. And, like, that's just sort of where the episode ends, with, like, Aang, like, going to, like, Roku's shrine in the volcano. This next episode, yeah, episode 6, it's called Masks because, well, guess who shows up? This one's the closest to the original cartoon. Like, it still, like, fuses stuff from other episodes, but, like, most of this episode is a pretty straightforward retelling of the Blue Spirit episode. Throughout this episode, we see this is Zuko's backstory, where, like, you know, he goes to the war meeting, and, like, the Ozai, the generals, want to, like, sacrifice a group of new recruits to, you know, as a distraction, because, you know, Fire Nation likes doing that. Ozai is definitely on the "we have reserves" mentality, and Zuko is like, "What? That's terrible! Don't do that!" And of course, because he disrespected them, he'll have to settle this through an Agni Kai. And next morning, he's like, "Oh shit! I'm gonna fight my dad." And yeah, this is when, like, the Fire Lord, like, takes off his shirt, and the entire internet goes, "Oh no, he's hot!" I made that joke last time, but I don't care. So here, he actually fights him. Like, in the cartoon, Zuko just would not fight him, and that's why Ozai decided to, like, burn him. Here they fight, and Zuko actually kind of has his father on the ropes at one point, but he won't deliver a finishing blow, so Ozai is, of course, like, "You're weak!" And he, like, flips him around, and that's when he's, like, decides to, like, burn him. Though, interestingly, like, watching, like, all the, like, obviously, Iroh, like, still turns away, because, like, obviously, you know, he actually cares. Like, weirdly, like, Ozai and Azula don't seem to be enjoying this either. Like, Ozai looks almost pained to do it, and Azula's just sort of, like, she kind of has a neutral expression, but you can tell that she's internally horrified. Unlike the cartoon where she's just like, that idiot. While Zuko's healing up, initially it seems that, like, Ozai is, like, willing to let burning him be punishment enough. And, he's like, what separates us from the rest of the world is that we can sacrifice the weak to win. And Zuko obviously disagrees. He's like, but, like, don't they deserve the chance to become stronger? And Ozai is just like, compassion is a sign of weakness. And that's what makes him banish Zuko from the Fire Nation. You can only return when you've found and captured the Avatar. So, like, in the cartoon, Ozai is just evil and hateful enough that, yeah, he would do that. Here, Ozai doesn't hate Zuko. It's just more like, you know, a dad finding a punishment for his son. So, like, setting him on a snipe hunt to go find the Avatar, that seems a bit overkill for this one. I don't know. And then Ozai says, "Oh, and since you care about the 41st Division so much, take them with you." And so we find out that Zuko's crew, that's the division that he saved, which that was not in the cartoon. I actually like this change quite a bit. Like, it actually, like, sort of, like, straightens their connection. Like, previously, like, in that Storm episode, like, Zuko sort of proves himself by, like, he rescues them from the storm, which, you know, that is good. And, like, honestly, like, for a visual medium, I like that more because, like, we see him help them out, while here he just kind of doesn't really do anything. But I like that they're given, like, the connection here, as the crew reminded that Zuko is the reason they're all alive, because he actually kind of cares about them. Meanwhile, Aang is going to the Roku's, like, temple to ask him how he could deal with Ko and save his friends. Well, the fire stage is, you know, they turn on him, but, you know, obviously the one defector is there to help Aang. And, like, I have no idea how this guy, like, fends off all the others, because, like, in the cartoon, Katara and Sokka were also there. But yeah, Aang goes to Roku. Roku is, kind of weirdly jokey. I thought that was weird. Like, in the cartoon, he was just sort of, you know, typical old mentor with this really scratchy voice that is probably going to ruin my own throne if I keep talking like this. Okay, I've seen him slow. Like, you know what I mean. Roku revealed that he took a statue from Ko that belonged to Ko's mother. That is definitely not from the cartoon. And it says that Aang can, like, trade that with Ko for his friend's safety. Because, yeah, Ko doesn't just eat people's faces, he just sort of webs them up in, like, spiderweb, and then, like, apparently it takes a really, really, really long time to get to actually eating them. And Roku tells Aang to not rely on friends too much. He doesn't mention by name. Roku is definitely referring to Sozin, since Sozin kind of let him die, at least in the cartoon. When Aang gets out of the shrine, sees that the fire sages are, like, paralyzed. He's like, wait, what? That's when June comes in. I have no idea how June tracked Aang all the way there, because Aang flew there, and, like, in the cartoon, June was tracking Katara, because, like, Zuko had, like, her necklace, and he held up, like, the necklace to, like, June's beast, and, like, that's how they were able to track Katara, because, you know, if Katara's there, then Aang is there. I guess I did fly an Appa, though, so maybe, I don't know where I was going with this. June captures Aang, and Zuko is ready to take him back to the Fire Nation. That's when Zhao comes up and reveals that, haha, I'm working against you now. And so he steals Aang and locks him up at the Fire Nation base. And he starts, like, bragging and boasting. This is a really weird episode for Zhao, because, like, here he's a lot more, not really comedic, I guess. But, like, he's always been an arrogant braggart. But, like, here he's like the timing especially just makes it sound like, you know, it's like, I'm doing epic. Oh, hey, can I, like, make, like, a comment here? I don't know. You know, he still wants to be, like, thought of as, like, super great. He's definitely, his ego, I think, is honestly even more massive than it is in the cartoon. And, of course, then, you know, the blue spirit comes in, and it's basically just literally the cartoon. This is, like, the only time in the show where something is literally just the cartoon, but, like, again. And if I wanted to watch this cartoon, I'd watch the cartoon. So, like, this is entertaining, but, like, I kind of wish they did other things, like, yeah, they escape. Zuko, like, holds up his swords to Aang's throat to prevent Zhao from taking him, and Zhao decides to, like, let him go. One of the archers that Azula hired for Zhao knocks Zuko out. Aang rescues Zuko, and they hide out in, like, a barn. Zuko gets really, like, triggered when, like, Aang talked about how compassionate Zuko was. You know, that's part of where the flashback plays. And Zuko, like, goes nuts. He attacks Aang, Aang knocks him out, and puts Zuko on his boat, and sails him away while Aang escapes. So during this whole time, Iroh was telling the crew about that story. And previously, like, the lieutenant, his name is G, was saying, he may be a prince, but he's not our prince. But, like, after Iroh tells him the story about how Zuko is the reason they're all still alive, they all welcome it back, like, they go like, our prince has returned, and, you know, that does feel satisfying. Meanwhile, Aang goes back to the spirit realm. He gives Ko the statue, and everyone who was captured by him, like, escapes. He goes back to find Gyatso because he says he would, and then it turns out Gyatso disappeared. I don't know why. Maybe he just decided to move on finally. And I think the rest of the show is just, like, the last two episodes are the last 3 from the cartoon. I've been talking for over an hour. My voice is like isn't quite as scratchy as now, but I'm gonna stop here for now. I'm gonna talk about the finale and like final thoughts like in like a part 3. And I know this whole thing is probably gonna be over 3 hours. That's just how it is. I've got so much to say. I haven't even talked about the performances yet. I haven't even talked about stuff where the series could go. We still haven't even talked about you and the water spirits and these things. Anyway, that's it for me. See you guys with the last 2 episodes then. Bye. Hello. I'm back, and hopefully for the last time for this thing, I'm finishing up my very long, very rambly thoughts on Netflix's live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender adaptation. We're on the last 2 episodes now, so let's not waste any time and let's just jump in. So we start off with Zuko and Iroh, on their ship, and one of the crew members tells like Zuko that the Fire Lord is apparently coming to visit. So, and because Zuko doesn't have the Avatar, Zuko has to escape on a small rowboat. However, Zuko notices some stuff covered up in a tar peel. Removes the tarp and sees, oh shit, it's blasting jelly, and it explodes. And Zhao, of course, obviously Zhao was the one behind it, and he's like, my condolences. He doesn't really care. Like in the cartoon, it was the pirate. Zhao got the pirates to do it, but since the pirates aren't in this episode, aren't in the show at all, I guess just Zhao did it himself. So Zhao still offers Iroh to serve as general, and Iroh clearly knows Zhao is responsible, but he's still he stays with him, I guess to find out what Zhao was up to, and also because he knows he can tell Zuko escaped. Meanwhile, Aang and Ko, they finally arrive at the Northern Water Tribe, and here's where we meet Yue. And I've talked about how most of the costuming is really good, with one exception. Yue is that exception. I don't know who designed the wig for her, but it is so very clearly a wig. That is very clearly not actual hair. Listen, I and everyone else in the world have made fun of the hairstyle in the Shyamalan film. Everyone in the world, when we see that first shot of them going into the Northern Water Tribe throat room, I guess, or whatever, in the Shyamalan film, everyone looks at her hair looks like a penis. Now, it thankfully doesn't look like that, although some shots from the back still kind of look a little meh. But, at least in the Shyamalan film, it actually looked kind of like hair. Her actual hair. Hair kind of looks like she's doing a weird... Yue is doing a weird, white Marge Simpson cosplay or something. I don't know. The weird, beehive. It just kind of looks weird. And Aang is like, guys, I had a vision, war is coming. And they're like, well, we can't really fight, we don't know what to do. And they're not happy to see that Aang is still not actually mastered any of the other elements. Again, in the cartoon, he's learning waterbending with Katara. But he's not here, and I don't know why. Why is that? I don't think this is explained at all. They have a feast, which, that's when, Sokka meets Yue. And Yue, from a character perspective, is basically the same as the cartoon, though, she's a little less sad, I guess. And that's when Yue reveals that she was the fox that Sokka saw in the spirit world. So, when I was talking about the fox that had, the girl voice and the ring on one of the tails, yeah, that was Yue. That is an interesting twist. Okay. So I like the fact that because the moon spirit's energy was used to heal her here, it makes her she's kind of a bridge between the spirit world and the normal world, kind of like Aang is. I kind of like that. It gives her like a little bit more intrigue and mystique to her that she didn't have in the cartoon. While this is happening, like Aang is like visiting Avatar Kuruk's shrine, and I'll be honest with you, I completely forgot this character even existed. Like, I don't even remember where he's from. Is he in like later seasons of the show? I haven't watched like the later season, like book 2 and 3 in a while. Is he from Korra? Is he like in the comics? I don't remember. And he's kind of a grump. And Kuruk is the, you know how Ko said like he stole someone who belonged to someone who a previous avatar loved? That avatar was Kuruk. Like Kuruk's wife, girlfriend, something like was like killed by Ko. And he tried to get her back, but he couldn't, and like his body was like sort of fucked up by like his adventures. And so he cannot take over Aang's body the way Kyoshi did. And he is also like, your friends will become a burden to you. Like, what can you live with potentially watching them die? So yeah, again, more angst for Aang that I don't think he really needs at this point. And so Aang decides that he needs to fight the Fire Nation alone. And while this is happening, Katara is, you know, talking to Master Pakku, you know, that old fart from the cartoon. And he still will, you know, he won't train her because, you know, he's still, you know, sexy. He still treats like women stay in the kitchen. So like the female waterbenders, I can't talk today, are, you know, just doing the healing. This is actually the first time we see the healing. So because like they cut this part where Aang burns Katara's hands by accident from the cartoon, this is the first time we see waterbending used to heal. I don't think we actually see Katara actually do it here, but like it'll definitely come into play later. I mean, it'll have to for certain very important plot elements in later seasons. And she's mad that like Pakku won't let her fight, so they fight. You know, it's fine. Like the fight in the cartoon wasn't the most impressive thing either, but like, you know, I felt it was more satisfying due to Katara being more fiery and Pakku being such an asshole. Both characters are softened here, so I think it loses some of its impact. It's like Pakku is more like sexist because like it's their tradition, which is fine. You know, that still happens. There's a lot of people who are like, you know, not trying to be mean, but like, you know, they still have like these outdated ideals because that's just how they were raised, and not just because they're an asshole. But you know, Pakku being an asshole in the cartoon is what made like Katara's big speech against him work. You know, Pakku still wins, and the whole time I kept going, notice the necklace, notice the necklace, notice the necklace, because you remember the cartoon, like Pakku made that necklace for Gran, you know, back when they were younger, but like he doesn't, and so we don't really get that part. So I'm just wondering, yeah, he sort of like removed a lot of his significance there. Meanwhile, Zuko goes to sneak into the water tribe, and also in Azula's weird sea plot, she's continuing to like go her training, and she like beats down like all the firebenders, which are apparently like prisoners of war. So like Ozai's idea of like a gladiator fight is to have them fight her to the death. You know, this is where we see like her perfectionist, well, her father's perfectionism rubbing off on her. Because like they were like, you should have ended that fight like 3 moves ago, and she's like, are you kidding me? And she gets like so like pissed off that's when she like blasts lightning, which I was shot kind of strange because the lightning sort of just kind of goes off screen. I kind of wish you like saw like the full blast, or if she blasted somebody, you know. That's when the fire was like, haha, now this is interesting. And Manti and Lee continue to stand around and exist. And that's sort of where the episode ends. Moving on to, essentially part 2. The last episode, Legends, which is, adapting the last episode. So this one goes like mostly the same as the cartoon. Zhao's forces attack the waterbenders. Oh, something I didn't talk about earlier. We meet like Yu's ex, Han, who I completely forgot his name before watching this episode. Like in the cartoon, he was around for about 3 minutes total. He was really dumb. He saw Yu as more of a trophy than an actual person, and he got a very anticlimactic send-off when he ran up a Fire Nation ship and then he was tripped off the edge, never to be seen again. Maybe he died, I don't know. Here they changed him quite a lot. He's actually fairly nice and not terrible. He's friendly. Like, he and Yu are still amicable. It's like, well, Yu doesn't love him. Like, he doesn't hold any resentment towards her. Doesn't have anything against Sokka, and he's generally trying to be helpful. So, by that logic, he has to die. and he does. Like, in the big battle. Zhao uses the hot air balloon that Sokka and the mechanics designed back like 5 episodes ago. And that's how they get to like the sacred place. Which at this point, here is like more of like this big like park thing here with like a big waterfall, which like I guess it was kind of there in the cartoon, but like that had like an area of like 25 square feet, so it wasn't very big. Here it's like much larger and looks cooler. Sokka's charged with protecting Yue, so they go over to the place. Meanwhile, the Fire Nation troops and Zhao and Iroh are searching for where the spirits are. But yeah, Zhao says that he wants to kill, like, the moon spirit. Like, Iroh's of course like, hey, killing spirits is a bad idea. Like, dude, whatever you do not kill the water spirits. And Zhao's like, why would I do that? Our ships wouldn't work, and we'd kill all the waterbenders. Well, I'm still gonna kill the moon spirit, even though that'll still have, like, a big, like, effect on the world, so, he's not the brightest tool. But yeah, he goes, he finds it, like, Aang comes down to stop him. Katara's, like, Katara tries to help, but, like, Zuko shows up and, they fight. And, like, the roof collapses on top of them. They both live somehow. Zhao kills the moon spirit with a knife, which is funny because it's actually how he killed him in the Shyamalan film instead of with firebending. Except in the Shyamalan film, he was shot terribly, so it looked like he punched the fish bag. Actually, like, I just remembered, like, this has an actual explanation as to why, like, the moon and the ocean spirits, like, are here, like, are fish. Like, in the cartoon, they're just sort of here. We don't actually know why. Here, like, they come here, like, it's sort of like an annual thing. And they just sort of stay there for a night before going to the spirit world. And Zhao found that out via a scroll somewhere. Which, yes, he found out about the spirits in a scroll in the cartoon too. But, like, here, I guess the scroll had more information. I don't know. But yeah, he kills the spirit. Iroh gets mad at him and blasts him, so he has to run away. And the moon, sort of disappears or turns black. I don't know, it didn't really make that much sense in the cartoon either. And like in the cartoon, the color scheme turns like grayscale, except for when there's like firebending, which you can see colors around them. It looked cool in the cartoon and it looked cool here. I don't know whether it looks more or less impressive because like here it's all in a computer, so you can kind of just do color correcting whenever. Whereas in the cartoon, at least at first, they were doing most of this by hand. I think some of the coloring might have been on a computer, but like it still looks, it at least looks hand drawn, in the cartoon. It's 2D. And Aang decides to like give himself up to the ocean spirit, And yeah, he does that in the cartoon as well. Like in the cartoon, when the ocean spirit like merges with him, he's really like this giant Aang, this like massive Titan thing that sort of like attacks Fire Nation. Here it turns into this massive watery fish monster that looks really cool. Like the water effects look super duper good. Again, like that's what happens when you have a full like team of like VFX things that aren't stretched across a billion projects. Disney. I think I like it. I like this more than the cartoon actually. Like I like how it looks, and you can see like Aang, his glowing form, like in the center of it. So yeah, it runs around and attacks. Zuko, you know, he gets out. He confronts Zhao about like trying to kill him, and Zhao's like, "Well, who do you think sent me? Like your sister sent me here. Your dad never wanted you to come back." And you know that pisses Zuko off, and like he starts like, so anyway, I started blasting. But like, you know, he does again stop from killing him. Turns around and Zhao is about to stab him in the back like the coward he is. You know, kind of like in their Agni Kai in the show. And then like Iroh, you know, saves Zuko by like blasting Zhao and sending him to fall to his death into the canal. So so I guess that means we won't be seeing Zhao in his like weird purgatory in the spirit world in Korra. That is like one of the only things I know about Korra, that Zhao is just like being held in prison by like the water spirit. You know, Yue sacrifices herself. You know, she kisses Sokka, and then she goes into the water, and you know, I guess turns into the new moon spirit. And I will say, like, I praised Sokka and Suki having more screen time together in episode 2, because you know they're obviously going to be like the endgame couple, and you know, it could help their like relationship. I feel kind of the opposite with Yue here. Like, she and Sokka have less screen time, so I think they have like a total of like 2 or 3 conversations, and so them being in love kind of feels out of nowhere. And also, again, Yue doesn't have any like angst about like being in an arranged marriage. I guess because she isn't here. Like again, they're like, she and Han are like exes. She sacrificed herself, the moon spirit comes back, the waterbenders get their waterbending back. Not after, like, their whole thing gets, like, completely annihilated. Again, like, so many, like, Han dies. But yeah, the ocean spirits calm down. Kind of, well, Katara, you know, does the whole, Aang, come back, you're better than this, you know, speech that every work of fiction does ever. He turns back, and they're like, and Aang's like, I caused all this, and Katara and Sokka are like, no, but you help stop this. Like, Aang's like, I can't let you guys like come with me. You'll be constantly in danger. And they're like, listen, we're with you every step of the way. You know, my friends are my power, which I think I've said this before. It's like the one anime trope the show didn't do. I don't remember the show ever doing the power of friendship. They're ready to, they're gonna go to Omashu, like, to have, like, Bumi teach Aang some earthbending, and Katara, who I guess is, like, mostly is trained enough now, is gonna teach Aang some waterbending. But yeah, during her and Zuko's fight, Zuko says, you must have found a master, and she's like, you're looking at her. And, like, Aang, like, before he leaves, Aang, like, it's like, hey, go easy. And Zuko's like, I don't plan to end it. And it's like, I wasn't talking to you. So it's weird. Katara, like, starts off weaker than she was, like, at the start of the cartoon. And here she ends up being, like, much more confident and stronger. Alright. Again, I feel like if we had that thing where she and Aang were training together, and so she would have, like, more motivation to be stronger, faster, you know, maybe I think that would have, like, transitioned smoother. But yeah, they leave, they go to Omashu, but something's not going to be right there, because Ozai, we cut to like Ozai and the generals in like the war council chamber, and Ozai goes, Zhao's failed. Whatever, the attack of the water tribe was just a distraction. You know, kind of like the beginning where the first episode where Sozin reveals that the Earth Kingdom attack was just a distraction to go after the Airbenders. Turns out, Ozai already sent Azula to conquer Omashu. And we see like Boomy in chains, and like the Fire Nation soldiers saying triumphant. Azula goes up, and she goes like, "Oh, for the Fire Nation!" And they like cheer, and the Fire Nation banner is hung from Omashu's gates. And then in a scene that feels like it was added at the last minute, one of the generals tells Ozai that, oh, thanks to some new like scientific like mumbo jumbo that we found, we discovered that the comet is coming back here and will arrive soon. And Ozai's like, oh, it will be prepared for the arrival of Sozin's comet. I guess he decided he wanted to name it after his grandfather, alright. So I guess he named it then? So from what I heard, the comet originally wasn't going to be in the show, which is a weird decision. And so I guess anticipating potential backlash, they put the comet back in, which is, that's fine. I mean, obviously, a ticking clock is gonna work better, but it's like, well, now, like the previous avatars, Kyoshi, Roku, and Kuruk just kind of come off as idiots for not mentioning that to Aang. I forgot to talk about this, but like, so like I guessing the reasoning why they decided to split Roku's role among himself, Kyoshi, and Kuruk is so that Aang could interact with avatars that symbolize the other three elements that he is not, earth, fire, and water. I think that's actually, I like that. If you're gonna have to do that, if you're gonna like split Roku's role among other avatars, I think that's a good way to do it. And that's where season 1 ends. Azula's conquered Omashu, and Ozai is now planning for his plans with the comet. And yeah, that's all the episodes. And I guess we'll have to wait for, I don't know, next year to get to season 2. There's gonna be one where I think they're gonna want to like get to work on season 2 like right away because of how the characters' ages like are kind of essential. Like again, the timing of the comet of the show is like of the next summer solstice or something. Like Aang only has like 6-9 months to like master all the elements, which adds more pressure on him having to learn them all. I don't know what they're gonna do since I don't know if you noticed, but adolescents age pretty quickly. Like the teenagers, like Zuko and Sokka aren't gonna like look too different because they don't age as fast anymore. But like Aang, Katara, Azula, they're probably gonna like look pretty different in a few years. So we might want to get started on that pretty soon. But yeah, that's the whole show. I'm gonna move on to the characters now. I already talked a bit about Aang, but like something I didn't mention, and something that I know is gonna be very polarizing, is how he's not quite as prone to detours. Like I know they're trying to make the show more focused, and but like Aang wanting to take fun detours is kind of part of his character. He likes fun. Why don't you want to take fun detours? Like, granted, not all of them are necessary. I don't think anyone's gonna be disappointed that the Great Divide is cut or the fortune teller. Like we don't need that stuff. But like Aang, remember he goes to Kyoshi Island in the cartoon because he wants to like play around in the water, and he wants to like go to all these places to like go penguin sledding and stuff. It's like Katara and Sokka who are like, hey, we need to go to these places, and it's like removing that stuff kind of makes Aang's character a little less fun. But like, it is what it is. I guess I could talk about the cast while I go over the characters. Having child actors is gonna be like a flip of the dice, because like obviously, like in a live action especially, you definitely want kids to play kids. It's just their acting might be not best, as we've had many examples of. Like on one end of the scale, you have the cartoon, which mostly did have like adolescents and teenagers play the characters, except for the couple that are very obviously adults, and that worked really well. Like I have no complaints with any of the voice acting in the cartoon. It's all fantastic. It's like S-tier material. And on the other hand, you have the Shyamalan film, which, granted, everyone sucks in that movie, even the adults. Like obviously, Dev Patel's Slumdog Millionaire is a talented actor, and he's like the best part of that film. But like even he can't be saved from Shyamalan's awkward directing. Thankfully, I thought the acting in this show was mostly very good, like especially from the young actors, like Gordon Cormier, I think that's how you say it, is like he shows more emotion in like his first 5 minutes of screen time than Aang does in the entirety of The Last Airbender. Like he can be cheerful, he can be like. He could be serious, he could be sad, he could be helpful, he could be like encouraging and stuff. He's a really good Aang. Like, and I can say that about like most of these guys. I know like Dallas Liu, Zuko's actor, is like a mega fan of the cartoon. And I feel like he even like changed his voice like kind of sound closer to Dante Bosco's like performance. I think he even like added a little bit of a lisp, which Zuko had in the first season. Yeah, I'll move on to like the other characters. I'll talk about Katara. I think Katara is fine. Like Katara was like never my favorite character in like any of the versions. But I talked about this before. I miss her like more fiery temper. It like gives her like a more like interesting like flaw, because like obviously like if you have to like describe Katara in like one description, it'd be like, she's the team mom of the group. She's like caring and wise and friendly and stuff. But especially in the first season, she can be kind of explosive. And this Katara does have her moments, like when she like snaps at Sokka, like in the cave. But mostly she's kind of passive. Like obviously nowhere near as passive as the Shyamalan film. Again, I have to stress, like everyone is way better than the Shyamalan film. But not quite there. Like again, like the actress who plays her, I can't say this. Kyawencio. I think that's how it is. I'm very sorry if I said that wrong. Like again, like her acting is generally really good, especially I think she sells like the sad moments probably the best out of the bunch, which is good because again she flashbacks a lot to her mother's death. Sokka is like I already mentioned. I'm not gonna like dwell on the lack of the character's like sexism in the start. But like he is more serious than he's in the cartoon. He's not nearly as hammy as Jack DeSanto's performance. But he still has his moments. Like obviously, like again, as I keep saying, way better than the Shyamalan film. In the Shyamalan film, he was just a total stick in the mud with like no humor whatsoever. I mean, he's still very much the most humorous character in this show. Like he definitely has all the one-liners and all, and he still gets like into the most like slapstick, even though the slapstick has been toned down because they're trying to be more serious. Watching like Ian Owsley in like interviews, like the way he's like talks about it, he seems to like really get Sokka. I feel like if he could have put in more humor into the character, he would have. I imagine this is probably like a writer or showrunner decision for this. But I think Sokka works. I think just about everyone works here, and there's no one I think is outright bad. Now we move on to Zuko. Like I said, like way earlier, the two characters you absolutely need to get right if you want a successful Avatar adaptation are Aang and Zuko. They kind of got Aang halfway, but Zuko is like, he is easily the best part of this show. And I'm like, yeah, okay, no shit, like the character who you have to actively try to mess up is the best part of like everything. Like even the Shyamalan film, he is the least bad part of that movie. But like here, I've praised Dallas Liu's performance and like how like dedicated he is to the character. Zuko is basically almost exactly like he is in the cartoon. So that weirdly means I don't really have much to say on him. And again, like he looks like basically how you expect Zuko to look in real life. The scar is the only thing that I'm a bit iffy on, but like I get it. Like how do you make that look like convincing in real life without actually burning the person? Yeah, I don't really have any complaints. He's determined. He has the right amount of angst. He has the right amount of kind of villainy, but kind of heroism that makes him fascinating to follow. He has that right amount of honor, you know. And he also just isn't also constantly talking about honor, which is, you know, very nice to see. This is Uncle Iroh. Iroh is quite different. I think he still like has the same role, you know, Zuko's eccentric elderly mentor. And he looks and sounds the most different out of everyone here. Like again, like I talked about how his beard is like more full and less jaggy than the old one. I know it never really stopped distracting me. But you know, I'm sure like other people think it's not really a big deal. The voice is easily the most different out of everyone. Like obviously, I don't know how the fuck you're going to like recreate Mako and Greg Baldwin's like performance without being negatively compared to them. So I guess what Paul Sun Hyung Lee, he has like a more not really more commanding voice, but you know, like how about some nice jasmine tea? Like he has that kind of voice. He still sounds friendly, but I guess he sounds much less relaxed than he usually does. And I guess this Iroh is like generally less relaxed. He's still mostly a good person. He doesn't really do much of anything bad. Like he still always has Zuko's best interests at him. And I didn't mention this in like for like the earlier episode, but like after like Ozai you know, burns Zuko, Iroh like chews him out. Which is, like, again, like, I wish we got to see that in the cartoon. Because, again, in the cartoon, like, oh, Iroh and Ozai never interact. So yeah, that was nice to see. Commander Zhao. Alright, Zhao was, like, never my favorite character in the cartoon. He always felt... But he was always just kind of the starter villain. He wasn't complex. But, you know, he still had an intimidating factor to him. You know, Jason Isaacs' voice was always... Jason Isaacs kind of like made that character for me. General Iroh, have you heard of the Moon Spirit? That's probably not what he sounds like at all. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at impressions. Yeah, Ken Leung is definitely trying here. But like they definitely turned up, again, they turned up the arrogance and slime ballness way up. At the cost of being less commanding. And because they removed the episode that has Jung, you know, who was, you know, Zhao's teacher, it means that he doesn't have that bit of dimension that the cartoon gave him, and so he just sort of ends up being kind of one note a bit. Like, although I will say in the later episodes, like Zhao already got like power hungry, like when he like captured the Moon Spirit. He's like, what will they call me in the history books? They'll call me Zhao, the Moon Slayer. Like, Zhao is a lot crazier and hammier, like, in there. Like, he's practically screaming, like, I'm Zhao, the Moon Slayer! And, like, there he's, like, talks about, like, with this power that apparently it'll give him, he will try to overthrow the Fire Lord, which he never tried to do in the cartoon. This thing, like, even, like, Zhao, like, even though in the cartoon, Zhao, you know, still tried to like blast Zuko in the back during their Agni Kai. He still had sort of a sense of honor to him. This one just has no honor. But again, it's better than the pizza guy from Spider-Man 2 in the show. I'm just going down like the character list, the cast list on like Wikipedia, so that's the order in which I'm going in. Next up we have Fire Lord Ozai. Again, I'm kind of surprised that he's in as much of the show as he is. Let's say, yeah, Daniel Day Kim is basically exactly how I imagined the character would look like in real life. And again, like, his voice isn't nearly as, like, raspy as Mark Hamill. But it is, like, the softness really works for the ruthlessness of the character. And, I feel like I've talked about him quite a lot, so I don't know what more there is really to say about him. I will restate my point that I like that he's, like, essentially trying to pit Zuko and Azula against each other to, like, make them stronger. Like, that, like, his social Darwinism, I think, is very fitting for this character. Well, there's some part of me, as well as definitely a lot of people are going to be disappointed he's not the complete monstrous piece of garbage that he's in the cartoon. Like, he's still a piece of garbage, but, like, he's more humanized. Again, I don't know how people are going to react to that, but I think if you want to do something different, I think this is the way you go about it. That's everyone in what Wikipedia calls, like, the main cast. Like, Azula is in the recurring part, even though she's only, like, one less episode than Ozai. I'll move on to her because, like, again, like I've talked about, Azula is my favorite character in the cartoon. I think I think she might be my favorite cartoon character, period, of, like, any show I've ever seen. So I was very curious as to how they were going to handle her. She's definitely a character they put in because of how popular, like, she became in the cartoon. Again, like, in the cartoon, book 1, she only has, like, 2 non-speaking cameos, including the Stinger. But here, they're leaning much more into her insecurity on being the best and being better than her brother, which the cartoon did do, but mostly in the 3rd season when I guess they've fully solidified how they're going to develop her. Because in the 2nd season, she's awesome, but she's mostly just sort of, haha, I'm super cool and evil, and I'm gonna, like, sort of, like, manipulate everyone into having things go my way. Which isn't bad. Again, I love watching her do literally anything. But, you know, this is sort of like an advantage of knowing where the character is going to be going from the start. But she's, like, more visibly frustrated by her father's insistence on perfection. I'm curious as to how she's going to, like, interact with Zuko later. Because, like, I talked about how she wasn't, like, sadistically smiling when Zuko was getting hurt. She was just sort of, like, had this neutral expression. But she did still, like, you know, get Zhao to sabotage him and send the archers to kill him, so, you know, she clearly still isn't gonna let him go on with his business. Elizabeth Yu's, I talked about her Elizabeth Yu's performance is definitely softer than Grey Delisle's. And, like, obviously this is not fair on her in the slightest, is she having to live up to, honestly, one of the best voice performances of all time, if we're being honest. But, like, I think for what she has to do here, she does a pretty good job. Mei and Ty Lee are, again, just kind of there. You know, Mei's stoic, likes knives, Ty Lee is cheerful and positive and stuff. Yeah, they don't really do anything except just, I guess, give her words of encouragement. Mei stops Azula from, like, beating one of the other firebenders to death. That's interesting because, like, you know, in the cartoon, they're both scared shitless of her. Like, she just, like, threatened them to join her. It's like, if you don't join me, you know, I'll set your circus nut on fire, Ty Lee. And, here they don't seem to be, like, if Mei was afraid of Azula, she wouldn't, like, outright stop her from, like, blasting people. And Azula wouldn't listen. So I'm wondering if, like, the 2nd season, like, Azula's going to be softer on them. And, everyone else, you know, they all serve a purpose. Like, again, like, Boomy, June, Kyoshi, Roku, Jet, they all look basically exactly how you'd expect them to look, and most of them sound pretty similar too. Again, love that James C. or Sai actually gets to play the Cabbage Merchant who he voiced in the cartoon. Again, just hearing, "My cabbages!" just brought the biggest smile to my face. Maybe I'm just easy to please. Again, like, the only major character in the show who isn't here, who obviously wouldn't be here, for obvious reasons, is Toph. I'm very curious as to what they're gonna do with her. That's kind of it, and I'm going to... I still, even after talking about this show for like 3 hours now, I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about it. I will say that right now, I like it more than I dislike it. And you guys are going like, what? But you just spent so much time complaining about, like, every single decision made. Okay, that's an exaggeration. But, you know, like, I did complain a lot. Sure. I mean, like, it is impossible for me to separate this show from the cartoon it's based on. Even though sometimes it feels like it's unsure whether it really wants to keep everything the cartoon does, or wants to kind of like do its own thing and fleshes some things out, but also cuts back on some other things. It does some things better than the cartoon, and it does other things worse. The Rotten Tomatoes score for this show is at like a 60% right now. I think that's fair. I'd maybe make it a little bit higher, like maybe a 65. Maybe I'll come back later and decide that I dislike it more. Maybe it'll get better on rewatch as I start to be less nitpicky. Maybe it'll get worse as I find more things to nitpick. Again, none of the bad stuff is the fault of the technicals or the performances. Again, like all the performances are really good, and the effects are mostly really, really good. The sets, the places look great. The costuming, for the most part, is great. The writing is a bit iffy at times. The pacing is mostly fine, but again, it's weird that they just sort of smush some episodes together and stretch out others. Again, like, I was never bored. I was never impatient. I was never like, when is this part going to end? But I was also never like, wait, you just sped through that so fast. Okay, maybe it was a couple times. It's like, my feelings are all over the map, but like, right, the show's kind of all over the map. But you know, a show being a mixed bag means that there is stuff that is worth continuing, is worth improving to see if it can get better. Because I think this show can get better. If I can be honest, like, even the cartoon, Book 1 is my least favorite. But I think Book 2 and 3, you know, obviously they have Azula, so I'm going to like them more by default because I'm biased. But, you know, how they develop all the characters, Toph gets in, again, like, Toph also increases the show's enjoyability by another 300%. But yeah, I'm hoping that they can improve, and I want to see them improve. I want to see them, like, continue. Because, like, it's not every day we get a Netflix adaptation that actually feels like, okay, it's not perfect, but I can work with this. Like that Cowboy Bebop show, that was not good, and it was canceled after its first season because it was just that bad and everyone hated it. I've heard that One Piece show is actually really, really good and captures the magic really well, so maybe some people are going to be harsher on this because of that, and that's fair. I've not seen One Piece the anime or the live action series, so I wouldn't know. But, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, I guess, like, if I had to give everything, like, a letter grade, like, the show, the cartoon is an A+, and the Shyamalan film was, like, a D- or an F, and, like, I don't know, from what I hear from people, Legend of Korra is, like, a B. I give the Netflix Avatar a C+, maybe a B- if I'm feeling generous. But overall, if you ask me if I liked this show, I'd say, yeah, I guess I kind of did. That was a long time I spent talking about this thing. I think I spent longer talking about this show than I did, like, my 7-part thing on the Percy Jackson show. Which, I have more connection to that than I do Avatar. Because, again, like, Percy Jackson I grew up with. This I did not. I watched in, like, senior year. I watched the Avatar cartoon in, like, senior year of high school. I don't know. But yeah, this is done and over with. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is out now. I gotta play that. I gotta finish Alan Wake 2. Bad Batch Season 3 is still going. Dune Part 2 is out today. Like, Jesus, there's so much stuff happening. You think you guys can spread this out? Anyway, that's it for me then. Have a good one, everybody. Please don't have the next seasons be terrible.